I was positioned at the rear of the ballroom when the bride lifted her champagne flute and declared, "I rescued him from that broken woman." Laughter erupted, genuine laughter. Some clinked glasses while others nodded, grinning as if she had just delivered the evening's best punchline. I felt heat rise to my face, not from humiliation but from the surge of suppressed memories bubbling up. My stomach churned, yet I remained still, neither crying nor flinching. Then, amidst the sparkle and commotion, a waitress approached, moving slowly as if wading through water. She reached the center near the head table, silently removed her cap, held it in her hands, and locked eyes with the bride. "I'm his daughter," she announced, "and I have something to say." The laughter faded. The bride's face lost all color, her mouth agape but speechless, enveloped in a deafening silence that altered everything. Have you ever felt that instinctive urge that you don't belong, that tight sensation in your chest urging you to turn around? That was me, sitting in my car outside the Ridgewood Grand Hotel, clutching an ivory invitation with gold trim, my hands trembling. It arrived a month ago, devoid of a return address, just my name, Amara Lane, written in elegant calligraphy. I almost discarded it. Who sends a wedding invitation to their ex-fiancée, the woman he left behind? Initially, I thought it was a mistake, then perhaps an odd olive branch or a test. But deep down, I understood its true nature. An announcement, a warning, ensuring I knew that Gavin Rhee, the man I spent 6 years building a life with, was formally erasing me. It had been 3 years since I last saw him, not since he left our apartment in the dead of night after I lost the baby. He didn't even glance back. He simply claimed he couldn't endure the sadness any longer, packed a duffel bag, left a note, and vanished. But it wasn't just me he abandoned. It was also Laya, his daughter from a previous relationship. She was just 5 when she came to live with us. The moment she grasped my hand and called me mommy, I transformed from just someone who loved Gavin to someone who belonged to her. When Gavin departed, Leia chose to stay, not by coincidence but by intention. For months, I was a mere shadow. Waking up felt like trudging through cement. The silence in our home was unbearable. Every photo, every song, every corner of the apartment echoed the existence of a family that barely had a chance to thrive. There were days I couldn't even pick up the phone. I stopped answering friends, avoided mirrors, yet I continued to pack Leia's lunch, braid her hair, and help her with spelling tests, all while concealing my tears. One night, I found myself on the bathroom floor, shaking after yet another call from a debt collector when Leia knocked on the door. She was 10, barely reaching my ribs, and when she pushed the door open, sat beside me and offered me a peanut butter sandwich, I realized I wasn't alone. If she wasn't giving up on me, I couldn't give up on myself. It took 2 years of therapy, odd jobs, and nights immersed in self-help books to feel human again. Gradually, I rediscovered parts of myself I had forgotten. I began designing again. Websites, logos, anything freelance. I moved us into a smaller place near Leia's school, and I even laughed again, real belly laughs that felt like they came from my ribs. They were rare, especially when the invitation arrived. I left it on the kitchen table for days, until Leia finally picked it up and read it aloud. Her voice was steady. "You should go," she said. "Not for him. For you." "For what?" I asked, exhausted. "So I can watch him start a new life with someone prettier and richer?" "No," she corrected. "So he sees what he lost." I looked at her, now 16 and wiser than I had ever been at her age. And suddenly it hit me. She wasn't just talking about Gavin. She was talking about me. I was still treating myself like the broken version he left behind, but she saw someone stronger. So I agreed. Uncle Joe, who helped raise me after my mother passed, offered to drive us. He never liked Gavin. He often said that Gavin's smile came too easily and his eyes were too still. I asked him to sit in the back row with me. I didn't want to be seen, just present. I had no idea what I was stepping into. Perhaps awkwardness, maybe a few whispers. I certainly didn't expect a setup, a staged humiliation adorned in white lace and gold chandeliers. But before I get to that, I stood in the ballroom, looked at the man I once loved, and understood something I hadn't voiced until that moment. He didn't break me. He abandoned the pieces, and I had put myself back together without him. The wedding was everything one might expect from someone desperate to showcase a perfect life. Crystal chandeliers like glass teardrops from the high ceiling, aisles lined with imported white orchids, monogrammed napkins, and a string quartet playing with smug precision. I lingered in the doorway longer than I should have, trying to maintain my composure. Laya had already slipped into the kitchen to start her shift with the catering service, insisting it wasn't just to keep an eye on me, but I knew better. She was there to protect me in her quietly fierce way. Spotting Uncle Joe seated near the back, he nodded reassuringly as if to say, "You're doing fine, even if it feels like hell." I took a seat beside him, folded my hands in my lap, and tried not to gaze toward the altar, but I caught sight of him. Gavin. He appeared almost unchanged, with broad shoulders and that annoyingly practiced half-smile, shaking hands as he held a whiskey. To outsiders, he seemed warm and magnetic, but I recognized the cold distance behind that smile, the way he used charm like armor. Then I saw her. Serena, dressed in white silk with gleaming blonde hair, laughter just a bit too loud, and pointed. She leaned into Gavin as if posing for a magazine cover, every movement choreographed to declare, "Look at what I have. Look at what she could never be." They exchanged vows beneath a massive floral arch, and Gavin's voice remained steady. I kept my head down, biting my cheek to stay grounded as applause erupted when they kissed. Serena turned toward the guests, beaming as if she had just won something, and then the reception commenced. Glasses clinked, waiters flowed through the crowd. People laughed and gossiped, admiring each other's dresses. I quietly sipped water, forcing myself to remain present. Laya passed by with a tray of bruschetta. Our eyes met briefly, and she winked. "You okay?" Uncle Joe whispered. "Still breathing," I replied. Then came the toasts. Best man, maid of honor, a cousin, all the usual tales of how Gavin was a great guy and how Serena had transformed him into a better man. I almost managed to tune it out until I heard her voice. "I want to say something," Serena declared from the head table, holding a champagne flute. Her eyes sparkled under the lights, yet something sharper lurked behind them. She didn't glance at Gavin. Her gaze was fixed on the crowd and then on me. When I met Gavin, he was a good man but damaged by someone who didn't know how to love him right. A woman who was too broken to see how fortunate she was. I froze, my skin flushed hot and cold simultaneously, her words striking me like a slap in a silent room. "She almost ruined him," Serena continued, her laughter light but sickening. "But I saved him, I healed him, and today he's finally where he belongs." Genuine laughter erupted, people toasted, glasses clinked, and a few even applauded. Uncle Joe muttered something under his breath. I was paralyzed. Every part of me screamed to stand up, to speak, to shout, but I remained silent, staring at this woman who knew nothing of the nights I held Gavin's hand while he wept over losing custody of Leia, nor the mornings I woke early to write cover letters for his job search or the ultrasound photo I buried in my drawer that I never got to frame. She didn't save him. She simply arrived after he had already fled. Then I noticed movement near the kitchen. One of the waitresses had halted, staring directly at Serena, her jaw clenched and fists tight. It was Laya. She stepped forward, shaking but steady, and began walking past the tables, past the clinking glasses, straight toward the microphone. I watched her shoulders rise and fall, took a deep breath. Then she removed her server's cap, held it in her hand, and declared in a voice louder than I had ever heard from her, "I'm his daughter, and I have something to say." The room fell silent, and in that moment, I realized the night was far from over. "She's not just the woman you're mocking," Laya said, her voice cracking at the edges. "She's the woman who raised me." Serena blinked, puzzled. "Wait, what?" "I'm Gavin's daughter," Laya repeated. "From before he met you, before he ran away, before he pretended we didn't exist." The air shifted, a few gasps echoed. I noticed one of Gavin's cousins slowly lower his phone, unsure whether to continue filming. Laya stepped forward, speaking from the heart, unplanned but powerful. "He left when I was 11, not just my mom. He left me. He didn't call, didn't write. He just disappeared. And you want to call her broken?" Her eyes flicked to Serena, who suddenly appeared uncertain. I watched her work 2 jobs so I could eat. I saw her cry in silence, so I wouldn't hear. And when people asked where my father was, I said he was away on business because I didn't want anyone to know he chose not to love us. Someone in the front covered their mouth. A waiter froze mid-step. Gavin finally spoke, his voice low and cautious. "Laya, not here." "Oh, now you remember my name?" she snapped, stepping closer. "When I sent you birthday cards, they came back unopened. When I emailed you to say I missed you, you didn't reply. You didn't even block me, you just ignored me. And now you're allowing this woman..." "You didn't break her," Leia continued, her voice trembling but rising. "You broke yourself and then you tried to bury us as if we didn't exist." Serena's eyes darted around, searching for support but finding none. She turned back to Gavin, demanding, "Is this true?" He remained silent, staring at his daughter like she was a stranger who had just stepped in wearing his last chance. Leia approached me, and each step felt like a thunderclap in my chest. She reached for my hand, and as I stood, my fingers wrapped. Around hers, something within me began to stir. Not rage, not bitterness, but power. "Leia wasn't there to fight," she said, turning back to the crowd. "She came here because I told her to, because I wanted her to see that she doesn't have to hide anymore." Then she faced Serena, calm and steady. "She doesn't need an invitation to belong." The room held its breath. Serena's hand trembled around her champagne flute. "This is insane," she stammered. "You're just trying to ruin my wedding." Leia raised her chin defiantly. "You ruined it the second you built it on lies." Then she turned and walked away, pulling me with her. The crowd parted slowly. Whispers rose like smoke, and no one dared to stop us. Behind me, I heard Gavin call out once, "Leia!" But she didn't even glance back. Outside, the air was cool and still. Leia exhaled hard, as if releasing a truth she had held in her entire life. She looked up at me, teary-eyed but smiling. "I wasn't going to let her humiliate you," she said. "Not after everything." "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. "Yes, I did," she replied. "You saved me. It was time I returned the favor." In that moment, I understood that the strongest love stories aren't always romantic. Some are forged in silence, healing, and survival. Born the moment a child decides to protect the person who never stopped protecting them. We hadn't made it halfway down the hallway when someone called out sharply and panicked, "Wait!" It was Serena, following us out of the ballroom, her pride trailing behind her like a tattered veil. Her perfect curls bounced as she quickened her pace, but she no longer looked perfect. Her mascara smudged, hands trembling, she appeared real and frightened. Leia turned around first. I stood still, unsure of what this woman could possibly say that would matter now. "You can't just do that," Serena snapped. "You can't hijack my wedding and humiliate us." "Us?" Leia asked, eyebrows raised. "I didn't say anything that wasn't true." "You could have handled it privately." I stepped forward. "No, you could have handled it privately. But instead you stood in a room full of strangers and tried to paint me as a villain." Serena blinked, her eyes darting between us, searching for a foothold she had lost. I didn't know he had a daughter. Did you even ask? Laya interrupted. Or did you just believe the story that made you feel superior? Serena opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Then Gavin appeared behind her, jacket unbuttoned, tie hanging loosely. His expression different now, not cold, not composed, just exposed. Laya, he said quietly this time, I never meant for this to happen. She turned to him slowly. Which part? Me being born? You abandoning me? Or watching someone else raise me while you vanished? He flinched. I thought I was protecting you, he mumbled. You thought disappearing was protection? He looked at me, and for the first time, our eyes met directly since we arrived. I was broken, Amara, he said. You know I was. I was too, I answered, but I didn't leave. And there it was, the sentence that shifted everything. No matter how many years had passed, no matter how he tried to reframe it, he understood the truth. He ran, and I stayed. I can't take it back, he said quietly. No, I replied. You can't. Laya broke the silence again. You know what I used to tell myself? That you were dead? That maybe something happened to you and that's why you didn't come? Because the truth, that you were alive and just didn't care, was worse. Gavin opened his mouth, then closed it again, staring down at the floor, at his feet, at the trail of choices he tried to forget. Then something unexpected happened. Laya stepped forward, not screaming, not running. She simply looked him in the eye and said, I forgive you. He looked up, startled. Not for you, she said, for me. Because carrying your absence has been exhausting. I'm done. He swallowed hard, nodding once, his eyes glassy. You're incredible. You know that? He said. I know, she replied, smiling softly and sadly. She made me that way. She pointed to me, and that simple gesture spoke louder than any mic drop, an unvarnished truth devoid of glitter, wine, or forced smiles. A daughter choosing her mother in front of the man who had left them both. Serena stepped back, arms folded. So, what now? You just walk away and pretend you didn't ruin the night? Laya tilted her head. You wrecked it the moment you tried to build it on lies. I added, if you wanted a perfect story, you should have picked someone with nothing. To hide. We walked past them and out into the night. The sky was wide and deep, clouds stretched like pulled cotton, and it had started to drizzle. But none of us cared. The storm we just weathered could not be measured in mere weather. Uncle Joe waited by the car, glancing at us, then at Gavin, still frozen in the entryway, and nodded slowly. Guess that's what you'd call a mic drop moment, he remarked. Laya laughed, and I joined her. Not bitter, not forced, but authentic. In that moment, I felt light, not because anything was fixed, not because Gavin finally recognized what he lost, but because I knew who I was, and Laya knew who she was. And now, so did everyone else. The next morning, the headlines began to circulate, not in tabloids or newspapers, but through the way these things travel now. Quiet clips on TikTok, grainy wedding footage posted anonymously, short videos titled, Waitress Shuts Down Bride's Insult with Epic Speech. I didn't watch them. I didn't need to. I had lived it. Messages flooded in from friends I hadn't heard from in years. Some apologized for losing touch when things fell apart. Others simply said, you were so brave. But the truth was, I didn't feel brave. Not when Serena mocked me. Not when Laya stood up and spoke the truth. I felt like someone who had finally stopped trying to disappear. Gavin never followed up. Not a phone call, not an apology, no last-ditch effort to explain himself. I think he understood there was nothing left to explain. His story was written in the silence following his absence. And we were done reading it, Serena's name surfaced in gossip circles for a week or two. Enough to make it clear she had become the punchline of her own party. I heard from someone at the venue that she left the reception early and never returned for the honeymoon send-off. Apparently, she moved out within a month. Whether they broke up or stayed together didn't matter, because this story was never really about them. It was about us, me and Laya, and what we became when those meant to protect us chose to leave. After that night, something shifted in our home, quiet but powerful. Laya transformed. She walked taller, no longer apologizing for taking up space. I caught her practicing her speech in the mirror one night, not out of vanity, but preparation. She mentioned wanting to start a podcast for girls who think they don't have a voice. As for me, I began something too. I had always feared speaking publicly about my experiences. There's shame in being left, and people look at you like you're contagious, as if your pain is a warning. Yet after the wedding, I realized I wasn't weak for breaking. I was strong for rebuilding. So I started writing again. First notes, then essays. I submitted one to a parenting blog, and it got published. The comments flooded in. Mothers, daughters, women I had never met, all expressing gratitude, saying, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't say out loud." That initial essay blossomed into a blog and eventually a small community group. A few months later, I registered a nonprofit called The Second Thread, a space for women healing from abandonment, divorce, and emotional abuse. We host circles, provide counseling, and help them write their stories, both literally and figuratively. I never expected it to grow into what it became. I simply wanted to offer women a sanctuary where silence was not the only option. Yet, the most powerful moment came one night in January as I washed dishes in our kitchen. Laya sat at the counter, flipping through her notebook, her legs swinging, off the stool. Suddenly, she looked up at me and said, "You know, I used to wish my real mom had stayed." My hands paused in the sink. "But now I get it," she continued. "Maybe she left because I was supposed to end up with you." I couldn't respond. I turned around, dried my hands, and pulled her into a tight hug, breathing her in. Sometimes life doesn't give you the story you thought you wanted. Sometimes it tears pages out mid-chapter and leaves you to guess the ending. But sometimes, when you fight, when you love fiercely, and when you choose to stay, you end up with something better. You get to write a new story, and the best part is you don't need anyone's permission to start. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own strength or the power of someone who stood by you when others didn't, please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that being broken doesn't mean being worthless, and that choosing to walk away doesn't equate to strength. Staying and healing does. And if you've ever had to rebuild yourself, if you've ever held the pieces together when someone else dropped them, leave a comment and share your story. You never know who might be reading and needs your words. Lastly, if you want more true stories that hit deep and remind you that you are not alone, make sure to subscribe to the channel. New stories drop every week, all about resilience, truth, and the messy beauty of being human. Thank you for watching, and remember, you don't need an invitation to someone else's fairy tale when you're already busy writing your own.